Good morning, respected chair, faculty members, and research scholars. I am Jay Narayan, MPhil research scholar in the department. Today I am here to present my pre-MPhil presentation on my research topic, a study of African influence and role in Bengal, history and historicity in the 15th-16th century. This research is done under the supervision of Professor Gajendra Singh Sir, Head of Department and Faculty in Department of African Studies, University of Delhi. And I would also like to mention Dr. Manish Karamwar Sir for guiding me. These are the table of contents of my presentation. Introduction, research objective and questions, hypothesis, chapters, research methodology, and study area. The African arrival in the Indian subcontinent, especially in the Bengal region, played a crucial role in shaping the socio-political and economic landscapes across various dynasties and kingdoms in North India. The Africans arrived in the Indian subcontinent as sailors, traders, soldiers, royal courtiers, bodyguards. The time frame of research study is the 15th-16th century in the Bengal Sultanate, which is a medieval state governing the Bengal region that emerged in 1352 by establishing the Ilyas Shahi dynasty by Sultan Samsuddin Ilyas Shah. While doing research, I found pieces of evidences of the African people's presence in Bengal before establishing the Hapsi or African dynasty in the history of Bengal, which ruled for a short period of time in 15th-16th century. Most Africans mainly engaged in administrative, military and public works. This research investigates the migration pattern of Africans to the Indian Ocean region, especially in the region of North India of Bengal, particularly those recruited for military service, servants and royal bodyguard in that era. The migration in the taxes of the for the people, which also alienated him, the Sultan from the common people. After decline, Africans were expelled from the Bengal. Many of them migrated to the other states such as Deccan Kingdom, Sachin in Gujarat, and Zanjira in Maharashtra, where Africans were in high demand for military purposes. Few of them settled in countryside of Bengal, despite their expulsion from central position.
Non-governmental organizations in socio-political empowerment of Afro-Indians, Gujarat and Karnataka. The Afro-Indian community is a scheduled tribe of India that has ancestral link in East Africa. They came from Arab capacities such as travelers, soldiers, sailor, merchant, and eunuchs or slave, as mentioned by Jayendra in his last presentation. And they came through the Indian Ocean trade route. But they settled in India and became integral part of the Indian society as they occupied important positions and played crucial roles in different kingdoms such as Goa, Daman and Diu, Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, Bengal, etc. But the census of India reflects only the population of Gujarat, Karnataka, Goa and Daman and Diu, and that is the scheduled tribe population of Afro-Indians. It is 19,540 only. So the central theme of my work is to present on their socio-political and economic condition and how they have developed after the independence of India, and seek to locate the significant roles played by the governmental and non-governmental organizations for the upliftment of the Afro-Indian community in Gujarat and Karnataka. So this is my research area. Gujarat and Karnataka was only recognized for the ST status, but in 2020 it was extended to two more states, that is Belgaum and Dharwad and Bellary, these three districts. For Gujarat, we get to see that it is in this region only they are recognized as ST, and other state, other regions, that is Kutch, Morbi, Surendranagar, here they are recognized as OBC, other backward caste. Foreign governmental policies and initiatives and how they have impacted on the community. Then to delineate, the third objective is to delineate the present policies and initiatives implemented by the non-governmental organizations and evaluate their impact on the community. Fourth is to identify the possible gaps in the current efforts and to propose actionable recommendation for improving the socio-political empowerment. Governmental and non-governmental organizations have played significant role in the socio-political empowerment of Afro-Indians, but lack of cooperation among stakeholders has limited the potential of efforts. Thus, there is a need for an innovative model of NGO for socio-political empowerment of Afro-Indians. This is a scheme of chapters. I am only going to read out the chapters here. In the chapter 1, we have introduction, sources and literature, and chapter 2 on the NGOs, on the governmental initiative, chapter 3 on NGOs, chapter 4 challenges, and chapter 5 finding, recommendation and conclusion. So the major focus is on the methodology, how I compiled my whole work. So for the primary sources, I collected data from the Census of India, governmental reports. These are the primary sources. Report of the government such as Lokur Commission, Bhuria Commission, Karnataka Development Report of 2005, then the City of Kutch, the report from Tribal Research and Training Institute, Census of India 2011. Additionally, for primary data, I conducted content analysis, open-ended interview, questionnaire method was employed, and questionnaire was formed and forwarded to NGOs. Then ethnography was conducted. For the secondary sources, I focused on these sources, journals that included the work of Jayawardene, Drewal, Patel, Pequenet, Shroff, etc. Books, Bhatt, and conferences were seen. Then, coming to the content analysis directly, I conducted the content analysis, and here is the qualitative report of that content analysis. I focused on newspapers such as regional newspapers, Gujarat Samachar, Kannada Prabha, The Hindu, The Indian Express, and from them I found out these keywords: marginalized, poor, poverty, development, upliftment, and forgotten. And I checked how many times these terms have occurred in 90 sources that I have referred to. Here you can see the occurrence rate of these terms. This is the qualitative report of my content analysis, because seeing only number does not reflect anything. So for that I have added the qualitative report as well. As you can see from these examples, for example, the third point, Fiona Jamal Almeida lived in the community in 2013. Someday without water and electricity, found young girls and women were not going to schools or work as they did not have proper sanitary pads and laboratory. This reflects on the poor condition, how they are living in poor condition. They don't have basic amenities such as laboratories. They don't have hygiene products, and this has resulted into rise of the drop rates among the females. Other example also reflect on similar kind of idea and substantiate the quantitative report of my content analysis. This is the questionnaire, preview of the questionnaire. We formed the questionnaire using the Google Forms platform, and this questionnaire had only 14 questions. Some basic questions such as what is the name of your NGO, when the NGO was established, and what are the sectors they are working in. But the most important question was, are they working in collaboration with any governmental organization or non-governmental organization? And this questionnaire was forwarded to 15 NGOs. This is the template that we sent through. This email is sent to the Siddhi Jan Vikas Sangh that is run by Mohan Siddhi in Karnataka. And this is the report, how many emails I received as reply from the NGOs. So we had 9.33% of referred rate from the total emails into the NGOs, that is 5 replies. And these replies were not according to the questionnaire, because none of the email answered the questionnaire in any way. What we got to know from these emails is either the NGO is not working in the community or the NGO is inactive. For example, we get to see from the third point, where Aga Kharura Support Program states that we are not working with the community. Then lastly, see point 5, where Siddhi Jan Vikas Sangh declares that the NGO is inactive. And this is the most highlighted NGO in the literature, but this is inactive. Then because we didn't receive enough adequate data from the questionnaire, we needed more insight, so we conducted personal telephonic interview with individuals, and these individuals were both members of NGOs, community members, and community members included students as well as professional workers. And we requested 50 individuals to respond to our interviews, and we had turnout of 34%. So these are the individuals we interviewed. So first is Padma Shri Hirbai Bein Abraham Lobi. She is president of Nagarchi Mahila Vikas Foundation, and you must remember on the 17th November 2023 we had a conference also, international lecture series, where two people, Hirbai Bein Lobi and Mohan Siddhi, the former president of Siddhi Jan Vikas Sangh, came online and did a conversation with us for an hour. From their conversation, what we got to know is that the community is facing so many problems. People are uneducated and they need governmental support. Governmental support to open balwadis, elementary schools, higher education systems, and also they asserted that sports academy should be opened in their region. Another person is Aslam Mori. He is a Dhamal choreographer and dancer. And while talking to him, he asserted that we do send our children to school. हिंदी में बोलती हूँ, हम अपने बच्चों को स्कूल भेजते हैं, लेकिन कुछ ऐसे माँ बाप हैं जिन्हें इसमें भी ये देखना पड़ता है कि हम सरकारी स्कूल में उन्हें भेजें या फिर उन्हें 2 पैसे और कमाने के लिए भेजें बाहर. तो this condition reflects on their socio-economic condition. Then Deni Mayawa, he's a Sufi zikr singer, and he also asserts that the community is living in muflis. The term reflects very critical condition of the community. So these are the other people that I have interviewed, and some more people which I couldn't put pictures due to time and limited time and space. The ethnographic study, in this ethnography was developed by Robert Cozinet in 1995, and in this what we see is online digital footprints of the community, and for that I have focused on 3 Facebook pages, that is Siddhi Samaj All Gujarat, Siddhi of Gujarat on Facebook, Siddhi Society Development Foundation of India. And what they are doing there is they are trying to revive the history and work for their collective development, as can be seen in these examples. However, the first example is in Gujarati language, and this reflects on the historical idea that their ancestors were king and rulers. But what we are doing right now, we are poor and we need to work for our own development. And these all the reports are added in the annexure. We have 8 annexures which can be seen in my dissertation. So coming to the chapter 1, as I have already discussed, I am not going to discuss it more. Chapter 2 talks about the governmental initiatives in sports, education, scheduled tribe recognition, and social development, socio-economic development of the community. These are the 3 important reports. Local Commission, which does not extensively talks about the community, however it excluded the community from the ST list in 1965. Then the Bhuria Commission is the most important report, as it focused on the impact of TSP, tribal sub-plans, on the community, and it reflected that the program is functional in Gujarat. However, the focus is only on the eastern and northern part of this Gujarat, and the community that lives is in east and in west and the southern part. So the community is untouched through the TSPs. Then these are the organizations that are working for the community. CMFRI, they are training the community member in vocational development. National Education Society for Tribal Students, that is EMRS organization. SAI, most highlighted institution for the community. And what I found, that the finding of this chapter was that the governmental initiatives are not reflected in the literatures, which need to be reflected. The government is working for the community, however what we see, the impact of the initiatives are not that remarkable.
So almost everybody is aware about 1857 to 58 and events during this time, which consequently not only shaped the Awadh but also had an everlasting impact on Indian history. And historians and social scientists have explored the participation of Africans in various historical periods and geographical regions, different power dynamics and migration. But very minimal scholarships dating back to 1857 had addressed the participation of Africans in Awadh. So Awadh region, it basically one of those northern region which became the center of power, distinct cosmopolitan culture, and very significant during 1857 to 58. So my research is based on the role of Africans in Awadh region during 1857 to 58 Common Era, concentrating on Awadh region. It addresses a crucial historical gap concerning the overlooked. Also seeks to address the participation of Africans in socio-cultural milieu of Awadh and their contribution in making of Awadh, while focusing on their significant role during the period where they vigorously resisted British rule in order to ensure their survival and demonstrate their loyalty to the Kingdom of Awadh and the King. And this research also addressed the consequences of the events of 1857 to 58 on Africans, particularly their invisibility in the forefront, and how after the events they assimilated or lost with the local populace of Awadh. So this is the agenda of the today's presentation. Brief introduction of chapters, methodology and hypothesis, sources, finding and conclusion. So this is Awadh. This is the map of Awadh. It is sometimes also known as, you can see the spelling OUDH. So it was used by Britishers, OUDH, or sometimes OUDE. But we are, I am using a decolonial theory, so I am using the spelling AWADH. So it was a princely state, princely kingdom in north central India from 1722 to 1856.
इसमें इंटरेस्टिंग चीज देखो,
Yes sir.
फैजाबाद का स्पेलिंग देखो,
Five G.
Yes, sir.
FYZA, हाँ,
Yes sir.
और ए के ऊपर भी बिंदी है।
Yes sir.
ये उसमें उर्दू इन्फ्लुएंस है ना ये।
Yes.
प्लीज आगे बढ़िए।
So after 1856, Awadh was annexed by British rule, and earlier then it was ruled by Awadh Nawabs in the Gangetic Plain, separated from the Bangas Nawab of Farrukhabad. And through literature review, I know that I came to know that Bangas Nawabs of Farrukhabad also has a large concentration of Africans, and there has been a continuous power tussle between the Nawab of Farrukhabad and Nawab of Awadh. So coming to next slide. These are the synopsis of my chapters. First is introduction, sources and literature review. In these chapters, I will discuss the content of this chapter in detail, because on that thing my whole research is based. Second is the arrival and survival of Africans in Awadh. So in this chapter I have examined the migration factors and various socio-economic and political dynamics that led to arrival and survival of Africans in Awadh over the specified period. And this chapter also explores the diverse factors that contributed to their existence, including aspects such as cultural acceptance, assimilation, and their active participation in political environment of the region. And third chapter is Africans in Awadh region during 1857 to 58 Common Era. So this chapter particularly focus on the military aspect and the security aspect, military, political and security aspect of Africans during this time. And chapter 4, aftermath of 1857 to 58 and fate of Africans in Awadh. So this chapter explored the long-lasting implication of 1857 to 58 using uprising in Awadh or the African community. And this chapter provide an analysis of the economic, social and political changes encountered by the Africans after the 1857. In conclusion, there are several findings and importantly epilogue part. So epilogue explores the current status of Africans in Lucknow, which nowadays come under. So it further emphasizes the necessity of additional study to acknowledge and promote the historical significance of Africans in Awadh. These are the objectives of my research. So to study the social and cultural interaction and relationship between Africans and Indians during 1857 to 58 Common Era in the Awadh region. Second is to study the role of Africans in this time frame and their contribution to the given time frame in the Awadh region. Third is to explore the impact of British rule on Africans in India, specifically in Awadh, including their social and economic status, cultural exchanges, and political and military affiliations. Fourth is to analyze the impact of the events of these years on Africans in India, specifically in the Awadh region, and the relationship of Africans with Britishers, other Africans, and Indians, Africans which were already presented during that time. And fifth is to investigate the migration and factors of migration of Africans in India, specifically in Awadh, and the patterns of reverse migration from Awadh to other region, if any. Sixth is to trace out the contemporary footprints of people of African descent in the given region. These are the research questions. What? This is the hypothesis. Africans in the Awadh region during 1857 to 58 Common Era played crucial role in shaping socio-cultural, political and military dynamics, but the aftermath of these events led to the negative impacts of Africans in Awadh. these are my research is based on primary and secondary sources. These are the primary sources, which I divided in 6 categories. First is regional sources. Second category of sources are archival sources. Third is British sources. Fourth is other Indian sources and field visit. And I have conducted an
लेकिन ये तो सारा ही प्राइमरी है।
yes sir, it's a primary source. I have also conducted an unstructured interview of a Shidi family, which is still residing in Awadh. So my secondary source is basically divided in 2 parts. First is the all historiography of Awadh, all historiography of the 19th century in Awadh, and second is the other literature on African diaspora India, like Santi Shadi Gali and other scholars which have worked on African diaspora India. So my methodology, which is based on historical methodology, which is also based on visual history, oral history, archival investigation, field visit, such as monument and place which were constructed by Africans, which are still surviving, and interview method, which is unstructured interview. So I use decolonial theory because Britishers colonized the art and historical narratives during that time. So they misinterpreted and misrepresented the Africans, and through this they legitimized their British rule. And so I used decolonized art, historical and inclusive narratives, and presented a counter narrative, reinterpreted the African presence in Awadh. So this is my major source, which is Isknama. It is a semi-autobiography of Nawab Wajid Ali Shah. Why semi? Because the literature part, the writing part was written by Wajid Ali Shah, but the paintings was made by other painters during that time. So there are around 35 to 40 paintings, which are given in Ishnama, but I will show a brief. I will show in brief, but I will discuss only 3 to 4 pictures due to scarcity of time. So as you can see the demonstration of Africans in Royal Court. So in these pictures, Africans are depicted as dark compulsions, and it is also written in text that from who are African and from where they belong, and how they came to in the Royal Court of Nawab Wajid Ali Shah. It is also clearly written, and you can see the title, this part, the introduction given by painter. So I took help from Professor Chandrasekhar from Persian department. He also translated. He also helped me in translating these paintings. So this is the brief synopsis of paintings. So I will discuss only 2 or 3 paintings. So this is very important and crucial painting which I have choose for because in this picture we can see there were many African women, African wives of Wajid Ali Shah. Here, see, and so in this picture what we could see the cultural assimilation process, because there were during that time a Rehes performance was performed by many courtiers of Nawab Wajid Ali Shah, and in that Rehes performance it was a mixture of drama and dance. So many African women of Wajid Ali Shah, they dressed in the form of Gopi and Kanhaiya, and they performed the Rehes performance. So this reflects the cultural assimilation, how Africans were willing to culturally accommodate the culture of that region. And this is Begum Hazrat Mahal. Everybody knows about the Begum Hazrat Mahal part, but very few people know that she was also from African descent. Her father Ambar was an Abyssinian slave, which came from Farrukhabad to Awadh. And I found Muafi register of Lucknow district in Uttar Pradesh State Archive, which clearly reflects that her father Umar was an Abyssinian slave, and Nawab Wajid Ali Shah paid some amount to her father to freeing him from slavery, and that's why after that process Begum Hazrat Mahal came in the royal court of Wajid Ali Shah. Then he married her.
And
Her mother was Indian.
The 1857.
Yes, sir. And her role is very visible in 1857 to 58. He led the whole movement. And this picture, Sariful Mulk, this is also very important. because here we can see that a Colonel Haji Sharif, which was purely African, and he directly came from Africa as a slave. He was not in India. He came during this time from Africa, and he is drilling the British soldiers, and Wajid Ali Shah is watching from roof. So this reflects that the court of Nawab Wajid Ali Shah and the presence of Africans were above from any kind of racial prejudice, and it was based on the merit African reflected in the court. So these are archival sources. Here I found several petitions of Africans to British authorities in Awadh. After the 1857, Africans wrote many petitions to Britishers about their conditions, how they are declining, and how their role is deteriorating, how their position is deteriorating. And these petitions, I found two kind of petition. One is by elite Africans, which were royal courtier, and other was by common Africans. So I have found a very interesting petition of Dinayat-ud-Dawla. So he was a officer in the royal court of Awadh, but he wrote to British authorities that do not call me chela or slave because I am a free man. And it is after the 10 years of annexation of Awadh. So it clearly reflects the perspective of British authorities to treating Africans with racial prejudice. As we have seen that the Britishers were using the policy of racial superiority, so they were also implementing these policies in India also beyond any kind of